Moon Knight's run has finally come to an end on Disney+, and because you most likely have a lot of questions after that interesting finale, I'm here to explain, so let's start with a quick recap. Oh, and spoilers if that wasn't already obvious. After Haro is able to get his hands on Amit's Ushapti, the little doll thing that she was trapped in, he sets his plan in motion to revive her. Layla hitches a ride with Haro's entourage undercover after saying goodbye to Mark, and plans to take him out then and there, but Taweret stops her and asks her to be her avatar. She declines. Haro makes it to the god's hideout that we saw in episode 3 to revive Amit, but while he takes out the other gods' avatars, off-screen, Layla breaks out Khonshu. While that's going on, Mark rejects his eternity in paradise to save Steven, he does that, and now the two of them share a body much more fluidly. When he goes to talk to Khonshu, he renegotiates the terms of his servitude, and it goes without a hitch, which should have been a big red flag. Back in Cairo, because she realizes that she's kinda out of her depth here, Layla accepts Taweret's offer to be her avatar. Everybody fights, Moon Knight does his best Odesu impression, but when Mark and Steven get overpowered, they both black out again. When they come to, they're able to bond Haro and Amit together, but instead of destroying them when they have the chance, Mark tells Khonshu to do it himself. And since they did hold up the end of their bargain, Khonshu releases Mark and Steven from being his avatar, which then sends them back to the asylum where we finally see that it was just part of Mark's imagination. Probably. And the miniseries ends with Mark and Steven waking up in Steven's apartment and falling flat on his face. For the post-credit scene, we see Haro in a medical care facility until a man comes in to take him away. The man puts him in the back of a limo where we see Khonshu. Khonshu talks to Haro just to gloat, and he introduces the driver, Jake Lockley, who we've come to know as Mark Spector or Stephen Grant, which means that now, after 6 episodes, we finally have the trifecta of characters under the Moon Knight banner. Jake shoots Haro, and the scene ends with Jake driving off. Now, Moon Knight's first adventure in the MCU ends with way more questions than answers, and with this take on the character being a little different from what even Moon Knight fans probably expected, it's difficult to say exactly where Kevin Feige and Marvel are planning to go with him. Throughout the run, we kept getting teased and teased with Jake Lockley, especially in episode 4 with the sarcophagus that they showed off, which means that they thought that he was important enough to constantly build up to him. Now, in the comics, Jake was a cab driver and acted as the man on the streets personality who would be able to blend in with the criminal underworld to gain info that would help Mark. This was because even with Moon Knight having magical abilities from an Egyptian god, he was still mainly a street level hero. While Jake is obviously leaning into the whole driver thing in the MCU, that may be the only thing that he retains. Well, that and the violent tendencies. Similarly, Steven is a millionaire playboy who was responsible for financing Mark's moon knighting in the comics, and his MCU counterpart is definitely not that, so it seems like Marvel is really changing up his character. And although there was no confirmation of it in the show, because of Layla's insistence on it being temporary, it is likely that she's no longer Taweret's avatar. And since Haro killed the other 5 we saw, that leaves 6 gods, but really only 5, with no avatars. Since there's actually no guarantee that this will get a second season since it's been considered a miniseries, if there is one, that seems like it would be an interesting place to start. When expanding and looking at the broader MCU, it's even less obvious where they're taking Moon Knight next because it's very unclear how not only the Egyptian gods will handle the fallout, but how the other pantheons will also react. Because of what we know about Thor 4 and a certain butcher, that might not matter so much, but again, we don't actually know. We do know that Khonshu and Bast, the panther god, are related in the comics, so that may become a point in the future. However, that personally feels like more of a footnote than something that would actually tie into Black Panther 2 or beyond. When it comes to characters that we've learned about, like Randall, Mark's brother, who in the comics is a character named Shadow Knight, he could make an appearance as something brought on by a hallucination, but since his death was the catalyst that gave Mark DID, I doubt they would go that far to change his character just to reintroduce that aspect. Just like with the show, there isn't a clear path, at least from the audience's perspective, for them to take. Moon Knight is probably Marvel's most experimental project to date in terms of storytelling, and that ended up making it one that I think fans are going to be talking about for a while. And even though Moon Knight's been advertised as a miniseries, they can't keep people on the edge like that wondering when Mark or Steven or Jake finally pop back up again, right? Right?